הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב, שבת אחים גם יחד. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
It's lovely to be spending Shabbat with everyone here in the room and everyone joining us over live stream tonight. We begin our service on page 1 in the middle with pieces coming together. One part of Judaism is called Tikkun Olam. It says that the world has been broken into pieces, all this chaos, all this discord, and our job, everyone's job, is to try to put the pieces back together, to make things whole again. Maybe we're the pieces. Maybe what we're supposed to do is come together. That's how we end the brokenness. I'd like to invite up Sarah to light our Shabbat candles on page 3. You're welcome.
Beneath a broken street lamp, shards of glass and remnants of humanity linger on the sidewalk. A hungry child cries out for food. A widow walks with tears in her eyes, but in her heart, there is still hope for peace. When will the fighting end? Her children ask wearily. She answers patiently, when anger gives way to compassion, when hatred gives way to love, when darkness gives way to light. Promise me one thing, my children. Promise me that you will always act in ways that fill the world with compassion, love, and light.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. And at this point in our service, we think of the past week and we hold on to all of the good things from this past week. So if you had an experience that inspired gratitude, if you have some good news to share, no matter how big or how small, I invite you to share that joy with the community now. It's a good time for birds and their families. Yeah, and Rochelle?
I graduated nursing school.
Mazel tov. That's awesome. We definitely need more nurses in this world. Yeah, Elliot and Kate?
What were you going to say?
I was going to say our children go to the same daycare, but they're in different classes. And today they ran into each other on the playground, and they got the sweetest picture of them just embracing.
Aww.
Each other. Super sweet.
That's what I was going to say.
I love it. So we thank God for these blessings of siblings getting along and having those adorable moments captured on camera, and for the accomplishments of learning a new trade, and the beauty of nature, and the blessing of simply being alive for this moment in time, with Shehechianu in the bottom of page 4. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. We continue together on the top of page 5, reading responsively. We cannot merely pray to God that wars should be ended, for we know that the world is made in such a way that we must find the path to peace within ourselves and with our neighbors.
We cannot merely pray for God to end starvation, for we already have been given the resources with which to feed the entire world, if we would only use them wisely.
We cannot merely pray to God to root out prejudice, for we have already been given the insight with which to see the good in all people, if we would only view them with understanding.
We cannot merely pray for God to end despair, for we have already been given the power to give help to the helpless and hope to the hopeless, if we would only use our power justly.
We cannot merely pray for God to end disease, for we have already been given minds with which to search out cures and healings, if we would only use them constructively.
Therefore we pray instead for strength, determination, and willpower, to do instead of only to pray, to be prompt instead of merely to wish.
We continue on page 8 with an abbreviated version of Lecha Dodi. We'll sing the last line and then the top 2 lines. Boi kala, boi kala, boi kala, boi kala. Boi kala, boi kala, boi kala, boi kala. Lecha Dodi, likrat kala, penei Shabbat We continue in the middle of page 9 with Make It Happen. Don't just wish for a better world. Rise up and make it happen. Please rise for our official call to worship the Baruch Hu. Adonai, Amevora. be seated. We continue with Roll into Dark. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Boream v'layla, golel or mipnei choshech, golel or mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. We continue in the middle of page 10 with We Believe. We believe in tomorrow. We believe that poverty need not be permanent and that we need not learn war forever. We believe that there can yet be a time of peace, of justice, and of love for all who live on earth. Let people everywhere be sure that every deed counts, that every word has power. In spite of all its absurdities and frustrations and disappointments, please rise for the Shema at the bottom of page 10. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Please be seated. Page 11. V'yahavta et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavcha uvechol nafshecha uvechol meodecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al vavecha Vishinantam levanecha, vidibarta bam, beshivtecha bevetecha, uvlechtecha vaderech, uvshochbecha, uvkumecha, ukshartam leot al yadecha, vehayu letotafot beinenecha, uchtavtam, Amezuzot beitecha, ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני Adonai Elohechem. We continue on the top of page 14 with the mixed multitude. They weren't Israelites, our neighbors down the way, but they were slaves like us. I asked their son if he could keep a secret. He nodded, so I told him what my mother told me. We're leaving Egypt tomorrow, all of us. Pharaoh has abused us long enough, and we're not going to take it anymore. I've already packed my bag. There's actually nothing in it except a day's supply of matzah. We don't have time or money for anything more. Can I come too? Asked the neighbor boy. I'll ask my mom, I said. Instead of a simple yes or no, I got a whole lecture. But my mother is right. Your freedom is the same as my freedom. Yes, we are all in this together. We cannot walk to the promised land alone. We continue with Micha Mocha.
Yai dai dai la 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 la. Yai dai dai la 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 la. Yai dai dai la 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 la. Yai dai 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 la 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 la. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha neder b'kodesh. Nora tehiloto seifele. Tehiloto seifele. Malachutecha ra'u banecha, bokei hayam nifnei Moshe u'Miriam. Ze'lianu ve'amru, ze'lianu ve'amiru. Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. Adonai yimloch
We continue in the middle of page 15 with Vishamru.
Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני, עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
We continue on the top of page 16. Pray as if everything depends on God, but act as if everything depends on you. Those who rise from prayer, better persons, their prayers are answered. Please rise for our central prayer, the Amidah. Adonai. תהילתך. אננננננננה אדוני. אנננננננה שפתי תפתח. אנננננננה ופי יגיד. ופי יגיד תהילתך. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו, אלוהי אברהם, אלוהי יצחק ואלוהי יעקב, אלוהי שרה, אלוהי רבקה, אלוהי לאה ואלוהי רחל, האל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון, גומל חסדים טובים, וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לפני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל, אתה רב להושיע. מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים. סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומדומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי הכל. Please be seated. We continue with a quiet moment for personal prayer or reflection. Page 18. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki ata hu melech adon lechol hashalom. Ki ata hu melech adon lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. V'tov beinecha levarech et Amcha Yisrael b'chol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Tonight we have, unfortunately, a special prayer for mass shootings that have occurred this past week. We stand in grief with the devastated families in Buffalo, Laguna Woods, and Ukraine. We weep over the incomprehensible loss of life. We cry out with sadness, confusion, and pain. We mourn together over these senseless acts of violence, hatred, and destruction. Be with us, God, in this time of sorrow and fear. Help us, God, to offer comfort to those whose hearts are shattered. Rekindle hope and trust and courage within us and them. Help us, God, to sustain our belief in the promise that even in the darkest times, even when we feel most discouraged, there is reason to trust that love is never extinguished and that light and spirit will prevail. Help us, God, to rededicate ourselves to building a world that is safer for our children. Help us, God, to rededicate ourselves to building a world that is safer for all people. During these difficult days and nights, God, bring comfort and peace and hope and light to broken hearts and a broken world, and let us say, Amen.
Amen.
At this point in our service, we also think of loved ones who are in need of healing. Tonight, we think especially of Alyssa Freeman, Evelyn Lampert, Marty Cohen, Beth Levine, Rabbi Jerry Levy, Jean Sanders. Are there other loved ones in need of healing you wish to pray for tonight? With the power of community, we pray for their refuah shlema, their complete healing of body and or spirit, with the words of Mishaberach found at the bottom of page 20. Mishaberach avotenu mikor habracha may the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishaberach imotenu mikor habracha leavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. A few decades ago, there was a young boy named Raphael. He was a sweet kid, very observant, and always tried to do what was right. Raphael's father wasn't really around during his childhood due to a drug addiction and problems with the law. His single mother was always scrambling to find ways to provide for herself and her son. At night, Raphael would often hear his mother cry as she tried to figure out where their rent money or next meal would come from. As a 10-year-old, Raphael vowed to himself that he would do whatever it took to live a better life. Raphael recognized that his parents could only offer him so much guidance, so he sought out the advice of teachers and other adult mentors. They all advised him to go to college. That was the only way someone from his neighborhood could get out of the cycle of poverty. Raphael trusted these adults who did not seem to have the same financial struggles as his family. They were older and wiser. They all went to college, owned homes, and had stable families. Raphael wanted that sort of life more than anything. So when they told him to work hard in school, that's exactly what Raphael did. He stayed up late studying every night to get straight A's. Starting in his junior year of high school, Raphael began to apply for every scholarship he could find. Unfortunately, during his senior year of high school, his mom was diagnosed with cancer. Raphael thought about giving up his dream of attending college to stay home and take care of his mom, but she forbade him from giving up his shot at success. "I'll be okay," she said. Then Raphael went off to college. Based on merit and financial need, he was able to get enough scholarships to cover his tuition. But Raphael was told that he still needed to take out loans to cover his room and board. He signed all the forms they told him to sign at the financial aid office. No one had ever talked to him about the long-term significance of legal contracts or compound interest before. He didn't know what these things meant. All he knew was that he was the pride of his community, a young man who had become a college student rather than a gang member. His freshman year was great. Raphael was working hard and earning straight A's as he had done in high school. His mom and mentors were so proud of him. But during his sophomore year of college, Raphael's mother passed away from cancer. Raphael fell into a depression and thought about leaving school, but he remembered how she had urged him to do whatever it took to succeed. He talked to a counselor at the Student Health Center to work through his grief and managed to graduate on time. 6 months after graduating, Raphael got his first bill for student loans. He was barely making enough money to cover his rent and his first job out of school. This added expense was more than he knew how to handle. Feeling overwhelmed, he reached out to his mentor from high school. The mentor helped him look for another job that paid more. Thanks to some personal connections, the mentor helped Raphael get a better job at a company that even offered help with tuition. They wouldn't pay back his previous student loans, but the company would cover half of the tuition of an MBA degree for their employees. Raphael's mentor encouraged him to pursue the MBA. It would raise his earning potential, and he didn't even have to pay the full cost. Again, Raphael trusted his mentor and took out more loans to cover the master's degree. The promotion that Raphael thought he would get after earning his MBA never came through. Now he made the same income, but had even more debt. At first, it didn't seem like a big deal, but it was starting to affect Raphael's life in other ways. Not long after completing his MBA, Raphael met a wonderful woman named Gabriella. They wanted to get married, buy a house, and have children together. But they had to delay their wedding for a few years because they just could not afford it yet. Then when they tried to buy a house, the bank told them that they couldn't get a mortgage because of Raphael's debt-to-income ratio. So Raphael took on a second job at night. He barely slept and was so stressed out about finances that he and Gabriella nearly got a divorce. But after years of hardship and sacrifice, the day came when Raphael had finally paid off his loans. It was 20 years after Raphael had earned his degree. 2 decades of his life had passed, with most things being on hold. After the bank finally approved them for a mortgage, Raphael and Gabriella breathed a sigh of relief. They could finally get a house and start their family. But to their dismay, Gabriella was having trouble getting pregnant. They saw a fertility doctor who said her advanced age was the main issue. If you had started trying about 10 years ago, you would have had a much better chance. Raphael and Gabriella knew that, but 10 years ago, they couldn't have afforded a baby. They left the doctor's office and just sat together in the parking lot. Crying in their cars, they thought about how deeply unfair the situation was. Raphael had worked so hard for so long to create a better life. He did everything they said a person was supposed to do to succeed, but he still felt like such a failure. All he really wanted in life was the chance to be the sort of dad he never had, a stable, loving, present father. But it felt like life was just passing him by. He didn't realize that it was possible to run out of time as he focused on paying back his loans. His life could have turned out so much better, he thought. He and Gabriella could have been parents if he'd just been shown a little mercy a few years before. As I read this week's Torah portion, Bahar, I could not help but think of Raphael's story. This Torah portion is all about the sabbatical and Jubilee years, where God instructs the people to release everyone from their debts. This was long before the current student loan crisis, but there were still financial hardships in biblical times. Sometimes people would be in such dire straits that they would sell themselves or their family members into slavery. But the Torah teaches that people were not supposed to live that way, spending their whole lives as slaves in order to pay off a debt. Every 7 years, the Shemitah, or release process, would give a fresh start to those who had not managed to pay back all of their debts. This didn't mean people could just rack up all kinds of frivolous debt and refuse to take any responsibility for their actions. We all know that Judaism teaches that we are responsible for our choices starting at the age of 13. And a core concept of Judaism is the mitzvah, the obligation that we have to God and to one another. But Judaism isn't just about obligations, harsh expectations, or a rigid view of justice. To the contrary, we are constantly reminded that justice and mercy must go hand in hand. This idea begins with a midrash on the first story in the Torah. When God creates the world, the Torah initially uses the word Elohim to describe God. Elohim is a word associated with justice. But in the second chapter of the Torah, which is also telling the creation story, we see that God is no longer called just Elohim. God is now called Adonai Elohim. Adonai is a word associated with mercy. The difference between these two Hebrew words for God is like the difference between the English words mother and mommy. A teenager might complain that their mother grounded them for sneaking out to go to a party. That would be related to an act of justice. But the same teenager might ask their mommy to bring them some soup when they're feeling sick. That would be an act of mercy. The Torah called God Adonai Elohim using the names that convey both justice and mercy. Because both words for God are used in the creation story, the classical rabbis taught that the world could not exist without both qualities. They try to imagine if the world were based on justice alone. Justice in its strictest sense would mean that every person would be punished fully for their mistakes. And back then, punishment could have meant an instant death or a lifetime of suffering. That was no way to live. But at the same time, if there were no justice and all we had was mercy, then the world would also fall apart. If we had too much mercy and literally let people get away with bloody murder, there would be no justice for the murder victims or their families. That kind of chaos is no way to live either. That is why, according to the rabbis, we should take our cues from the name Adonai Elohim, which represents a combination of justice and mercy. Some people today are very focused on a narrow understanding of justice. They say that if someone like Raphael signed a legal contract stating that he would pay back a certain amount of student loans, then he should be forced to pay back the whole amount plus the interest. They do not care that the daily compound interest means that he has to pay back nearly double of what he borrowed on a 20-year repayment plan. Some say that a deal is a deal, a contract is a contract, whether you understand the terms when you signed it as a teenager or not. Then there are others who look at the overall impact that such a contract has had on Raphael's life. He had to delay getting married, buying a home, and starting a family because of this debt, which he had been advised to take out by all of the adults he trusted as a teenager. It's not that he tried to skip out on his obligations. To the contrary, he did his best to do everything right. But he and his wife suffered under a system that showed no mercy, even to those who were sacrificing and struggling for many years. As we look around at the millions of families who are similarly affected by student debt, medical debt, or other financial crises, let us remember the message of this week's Torah portion and find a middle ground between justice and mercy. With a combination of personal and communal responsibility, may we find solutions to these crises so that everyone can ultimately live a better life. And let us say, Amen. I'd like to invite up Sarah to share some announcements on behalf of the board.
Shabbat Shalom. Nice to see you guys. This week and the next upcoming weeks, we've got a couple things going on, and I think Lori's actually going to share an announcement after I read out some of our ones that are printed. So stay tuned. Don't fall asleep while I'm talking to you. So it looks like tomorrow we've got Torah study that's in person and virtual. It's at 11 a.m. Then this Sunday, we have the end of year celebration for religious school and Torah Tots from 10:30 to 12 p.m. This upcoming Thursday, May 26th, we've got the Orami Crafters at 7 p.m. That is virtual, so get crafty online. And let's see, Memorial Day is on Monday, May 30th, but I don't think that actually, we're not doing anything. Okay, it's just on there. And the Ormy Book Club is meeting on June 6th. The Great Kosher Meat War of 1902. Whoa, this is a really long title. Immigrant Housewives and the Riots That Shook New York City. That sounds amazing. But that's a crazy sounding book. That's on June 6th, the Ormy Book Club. And then importantly, we've got the Ormy board meeting, or I'm sorry, not board meeting, the annual meeting. So please make sure that you are all there for that. I am not sure what day that is. I should remember. Thank you. Yes, June 12th, Sunday. So that's what I've got for you guys. Shabbat Shalom.
I learned something today that as president of ORME I should have known already. Beth Meixner was out walking with David Goldsmith, and he told her that May marks the 50th anniversary of ORME. Pretty exciting. So what we will do to celebrate in the time of COVID, who knows? But we will try to do something before the year is out. And that's all I have to say. Shabbat Shalom.
We continue our service on page 22 with Aleinu. Please rise for the Aleinu prayer. Aleinu l'shabeach la'adon hakol, latet gedula liotze breshit, shelo asanu kegoye haratzot, velo samanu kemishpechot adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, vegor aleinu kechol hamonam, va'anachnu korim umishtachavim umodim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu v'ne'emar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad. At this point in our service, we think of loved ones who have passed away recently or at this time in years past. Tonight we remember with love the Artsites of Grace Amos, mother of Beth Levine, Louise Germano, mother of Patricia Doniger, Joseph Preville, father-in-law of Sheila Preville, and Ralph Woods, father of Linda Woods. Are there other loved ones we wish to remember tonight? Zichronam livracha, may their memories always be a blessing. We stand together as a community of support for the Mourners Kaddish on page 24. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, B'alma divra chirute v'yamlich malchute, b'chayechon uvyomechon, uvchaye dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehe shmei rabbah mevarach le'olam olomei almaya, v'yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei dekudesha brichu, le'ela mikol birchata v'shirata, tush b'chata v'nechamata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehe shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn, and may we be a source of comfort for all who are bereaved, and let us say, Amen. Please be seated. We conclude our service at the top of page 25 with Lo Yisagoy. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
And please return your services to the table near the entrance and join us in the back for Kiddush and Motzi.
true. Many, 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 many years. I've had the most spectacular year for peonies. It has been just unbelievable this year. Does she? I remember. She remember him? Oh. Oh. You know, Connie Chung is one of my relatives. She's a first cousin. And somehow the subject of mahjong had never come up. And I remember the last night the party we had, she and Maureen came down from New York, which they didn't usually do. The reason they did is because one of her sisters was, she's the 12th child of 12 children. And the only, and the only one born in the U.S. And she's my age. So she's, Maureen's like 110 years old. Anyway, so somehow I heard her talking about mahjong with somebody, and I said, "Oh, do you play mahjong?" She said, "Of course I play mahjong." And I said, "Well, I know this may be a delicate question, but do you play Chinese mahjong or do you play Jewish mahjong?" She said, "I play Jewish mahjong, of course." She said, "At this point in my life, I am far more Jewish than I am Chinese," which of course is a very funny thing for someone who looks Chinese to say, "I'm more Jewish than Chinese." It's quite a statement for somebody to make.
I played Chinese mahjong in China. I did not like it.
Oh, it's very different. It's very different. She said I wouldn't have any idea how to play Chinese mahjong. Well, of course, she grew up in the U.S.
Right, yeah.
All her brothers have been gone for years, but I think she has. I think she has two sisters left. One of them lives in Washington, D.C., and I forgot where the other one lives.
No,
Because I noticed it the first time in your face tonight. Just trying to remember it.
I mean, that's not crazy.
Well, congratulations. I know it's hard to do.
I did lose about 5 pounds, which I gained back 3 from the PSA.
But anyway, on the back of the program was the story of the choreography on that dance. And it turned out, you're And here's the, do you have a vase?